Anger feels terrible. Your heart races. Your muscles tighten. Your mind keeps replaying the same moment. And yet, hours later, you return to it. You rebuild the argument. You imagine the perfect comeback. You make yourself angry all over again. Why? Because anger does something fear and sadness often cannot. It makes you feel powerful. Fear tells you to escape. Sadness tells you something has been lost. But anger gives you a target. Someone caused this. Someone was wrong. And something must be done. In seconds, confusion becomes certainty. Helplessness becomes energy. Pain becomes a plan. That is why anger can be so difficult to release. You may not enjoy the emotion itself. You may enjoy what it temporarily gives you, control. But that raises a more disturbing question. What exactly is happening inside you when anger turns powerlessness into power? Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. For a split second, you're startled, maybe even scared. But then, something invisible happens. Your brain quietly changes the question. It stops asking, "Am I okay?" and starts asking, "Whose fault is this?" The moment it thinks it has an answer, everything changes. Your attention locks onto the person. The fear begins to fade. And in its place comes something far more powerful. Anger. Almost instantly, your mind builds a story. There's a problem. Someone caused it. They were wrong. And they deserve a response. It's a remarkable transformation. A few seconds ago, you felt vulnerable. Now you feel ready to act. Not because the situation has changed, but because your interpretation of it has. And that's the hidden reward of anger. It replaces uncertainty with certainty, helplessness with control. Whether that certainty is actually correct doesn't matter in that moment, because certainty itself is rewarding, which explains something almost everyone has experienced. Have you ever replayed an argument in your head, only to become even angrier than you were the first time? That isn't an accident. It's one of the most fascinating tricks your mind can play on you. Most people believe anger works like steam inside a pressure cooker. Hold it in, and eventually you'll explode. So the obvious solution seems simple. Yell. Punch a pillow. Hit a punching bag. Get it out of your system. It sounds perfectly logical. There's just one problem. That's not what many experiments have found. In one famous study, people were deliberately made angry. Some were then told to hit a punching bag while thinking about the person who had upset them. If the pressure cooker idea were true, they should have calmed down. They didn't. Many of them became even angrier. Why? Because every punch wasn't releasing the anger. It was rehearsing it. Every swing reminded the brain what had happened, who caused it, why it was unfair, and why they deserved to stay angry. Instead of closing the emotional file, their brain kept reopening it. Imagine trying to erase a drawing while tracing over the same lines again and again. You're not removing it. You're making it darker. Recent research reviewing more than 100 studies reached a remarkably similar conclusion. Activities that calm your body's state are generally far more effective at reducing anger than activities that keep you emotionally fired up, which reveals something unexpected. Maybe anger isn't something you're trying to empty. Maybe it's something your brain keeps choosing to reload. But that raises an even bigger question. If anger can be so destructive, why would your brain ever reward it in the first place? Here's the strange part. Your brain isn't actually chasing anger. It's chasing what anger gives you. Think about what happens after someone insults you. You suddenly feel stronger, more certain, more justified. You know who's wrong. You know what should happen next. And for a brief moment, that certainty feels incredibly satisfying. Researchers believe this is one reason anger can be so compelling. It doesn't just make you emotional. It makes you feel ready. Ready to confront. Ready to defend yourself. Ready to take back control. That's why people replay arguments in their heads. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because each replay restores that same feeling of certainty and power. But here's the trap. The more your mind replays the story, the more it convinces itself the story deserves another replay. Without realizing it, you've stopped reliving the event and started feeding the emotion, which might explain why one modern invention has become the perfect machine for keeping people angry. Now think about social media. Why do angry posts spread so fast? It's not because the internet created anger. Anger has always been part of being human. The internet simply discovered something our brains were already wired to do. Every like, every repost, every comment saying, "Exactly," does something subtle. It tells your brain, "Do that again." And without realizing it, people begin expressing more outrage. Not necessarily because they're becoming angrier, but because anger keeps getting rewarded. That's why your feed can slowly become filled with conflict. Outrage attracts attention. Attention brings engagement. Engagement encourages more outrage. And the cycle repeats. But here's the irony. The same emotion that can expose injustice can also trap us inside it. Because the longer anger gives you certainty, the harder it becomes to question whether that certainty is actually true. Which brings us back to the question we started with. So, why does anger feel so good, even when it's hurting us? Not because your brain enjoys pain, not because humans are addicted to anger, and not because anger is secretly a positive emotion. It feels powerful because, for a moment, it gives you something that fear, sadness, and uncertainty cannot. A sense of control, a clear explanation, a reason to act. Sometimes that feeling is useful. It helps us defend ourselves, stand up against injustice, protect the people we care about. But anger has a dangerous side. The certainty it gives you can feel so convincing that you stop asking whether it's actually true. And that's when anger stops being a tool and starts becoming a trap. So the next time you catch yourself replaying an old argument or searching for one more reason to stay angry, ask yourself one question. Am I holding on to the anger? Or am I holding on to the feeling of control that anger gives me? Because the moment anger makes you feel the most powerful might be the moment it has the most power over you.